All right, so we're on lesson 6, part 2, still working with dative. Now, one of the things about dative is that it uses the word to. For example, I gave food to the boy. The issue with that is that there are so many different tos, and hopefully you know the difference. But one can be an infinitive, and that's with a verb. One can be an indirect object, which we're seeing with dative. And then one can be like a preposition, like moving towards something. So we have just right there 5 different examples of, using the word to, and they're more in English. So one thing I want to differentiate, and we'll talk about this more later, is the difference between dative and this odd plus accusative. Odd means to or toward. And an example, I am running to the fridge. All right, that's not an indirect object because it's not receiving an action. So we're going to differentiate between the two. And the easiest way to do that is the Mackenzie rule. And the Mackenzie rule states, if you can sub in toward for to, it's odd plus accusative. All right. So if you can sub in the word toward, all right, we're going right here. Because in the dative, if you say, I am giving food toward the boy, that doesn't make sense. But on the other side, if you're saying, I'm running toward the fridge, okay, that can make sense. So some examples of this, and we're going to determine whether it's the dative case or you're going to use the preposition odd, which we'll get a little bit later, and the accusative. So I am walking to the store. Can you fit toward in there? Well, I am walking toward the store, yes. So odd plus accusative. I headed towards home. Well, you can fit toward in for towards or substitute. I gave a book to him. I gave a book toward him doesn't make sense. In addition to that, the him is receiving the direct object, making it an indirect object, so it's dative. I ran to the park. You can sub in toward. I will show the way to him. Indirect object, so dative. I entrust my keys boy. Indirect object, so dative. He drove to town. Plus accusative. He sped and the cop gave a ticket to him. Indirect object, dative. He drove to his house. Toward his house, odd plus accusative. Then he showed the ticket to his mother. Indirect object, dative. She gave a backhand to her son. Indirect object, dative. He bravely cried and ran to his room. Toward his room, so odd plus accusative. On the way, he tripped and fell to the ground. Toward the ground makes sense, so odd plus accusative. The ground gave him a bloody nose. This one's a little tricky in the sense that we switched the word order. And if you work it out, you've got the nominative, the subject, the direct object. What's it giving? This is the direct object. And this is the indirect object, which is going to be dative. Lesson learned, don't speed toward town. Plus accusative. All right, so Mackenzie rule, if you can sub toward in for to, we're using the odd plus accusative, which we'll become more accustomed to later. All right, we are sailing navigamus to many lands. So we can use the Mackenzie rule here. This is going to be odd plus accusative. And I'm going to need the word for lands first. A is going to go to AS when it's accusative plural. Entrust the letter to the sailor. All right. This is going to be dative, so we want to put A to E. We have a T here, but no nominative. So we'll just go with he shows the way. To the sailors. This is an indirect object, so dative plural. The farmer announces the good victory. To the girls. All right, this is going to be an example of dative, so dative plural is going to be IS. All right, now try those next three on your own. Go with it or pause it if need be. All right, so too many families. The A is going to become an IS, dative plural. Queen gives much money to many families. I don't like that M. To the slave, servo, because the US goes to O when it's singular. And then Damus Pecunium. To the girls, this is going to be dative as well. And then some NLE stuff. All right, so first one, we got this AE here. We know it can be one of three cases, so do we have a dative trigger word? No. It could be nominative because of the NT, which would make it the teachers. But we don't have one that's just the teachers. It could be genitive, which is possession. I don't know why it keeps flipping like that. And we do have one that is possessive, so we're going to go see. Quibus Romanis. We may not know what that means, but we do have a dative trigger word here. And dative goes with 2 or 4. And so notice, just by recognizing that we have a dative trigger word, we don't even have to translate the full sentence. All right, we have an RE, and we've seen that means to blank, so that's going to be to C. Dedit comes from do, dative trigger word to us. And then Nara is another dative trigger word, discibus lightis. So, alright, so there's finishing up our work with dative, but we'll say it more and more in the future. If you have any questions, please